I've been feeling terrible for the past week after returning from my last business trip. I didn't have diarrhea or flu. It was worse, much worse. I cheated on my wife, Linda. I know what you will say, what a low man cheats on his wife. I told myself this and a million other worse things, and now I feel like I'm below rock bottom. When I get home from work and see her, my stomach turns into a knot and I just want to cry. The worst thing is that I had unprotected sex with her and could have infected her. How could I be so stupid? I could say I was drunk, but I wasn't. We had been drinking for a couple of hours after a long day of boring meetings, but I wasn't drunk. When everyone left, and if I had not decided to drink one more on the road, I would not have suffered such a fate. If I had just returned to my room, I would now be smiling at my wife and enjoying her company. Instead, I sit on the toilet, trying to squeeze out my lung, or at least my spleen, to give me some relief your state. But who am I kidding? It will never go away. She sat down on the chair next to me, smiled, and ordered herself a drink. Did I pay attention to her? Certainly. When an explosive woman sits next to you and smiles at you, you notice her, unless you've already given up. She, like me, was on a business trip, but unlike me, she was not married. At least, she wasn't wearing a wedding ring. At first, we talked innocently, then we flirted a little, and when she put her hand on my arm, sparks flew. At this stage, I should have excused myself and gone to my room, but I didn't. We continued to talk, and the flirting became more and more explicit. She suggested we go dancing in the lounge, not me. It would be enough for me to just talk. Why were all the songs slow? I don't know how to dance, but at that moment we weren't moving much anyway. One of us suggested a nightcap, but I had to insist when she mentioned her room. We had sex. When my brain started to figure it out, I excused myself, got dressed, and returned to my room. My phone was blinking, and I heard a voicemail from my wife. It was too late to call, and what was the excuse for missing the call? Sorry, I cheated on you with some stranger and couldn't talk when you called. That would have worked, right? So I did what every cheater does and tried to erase the tracks and forget about it. It didn't work out. I called her from the airport and defended myself by saying that I would see her later that night. I spent the entire 3 hours on the plane praying to God that she would not find out the truth and asking for his forgiveness, vowing to be a perfect husband from that moment on. But the spasms did not go away. I think this was God's way of punishing me. Linda rushed to me when I arrived home. Having been married for only 7 years, we were still in the honeymoon stage of our relationship. She was what many guys dream of: 5'5", 105 pounds, cute short blonde hair, and a stunning figure. What was I thinking? I tried my best, but I couldn't cope. Every time I looked at my wife, I saw that other woman. Sex with her wasn't even as good as with Linda, not even close. I was drawn to work, but I was practically useless. A week after this, Linda told me to go to the doctor. She thought it was something serious, and it was. Just as I thought, I was physically fine. My brain was making my body pay for what I had done. 2 weeks after that, I decided to confess and tell her everything. She thought that I had some kind of incurable disease and that I was dying. She was half right. On Friday night, when the kids were finally asleep, I sat across from her in the living room and told her. Hell, I poured out the whole truth to her so I could finally lift this burden off of me. I felt relief for exactly 22 seconds. Lowlife, that's what she started with, moved on to cheating bastard, and ended up crying and running upstairs to what used to be our bedroom. Now I felt even worse, if that was possible. I sat on the couch all night wondering what would happen next. I was asleep. Hell, I didn't even breathe except a couple times all night. I wanted to die, and I think Linda would have been happy to help me at that point. It would have been kinder if she had found me dead on Saturday morning than what happened. Get out, Steve. Get out of here before I strangle you with my bare hands, she screamed at me. I never want to see your changing face again, do you hear? I was still stuck on her first word, and by the time the meaning of the next words dawned on me, they had already gone in one ear and out the other, while she continued to shout other things at me. Linda, can we at least talk about this? I walked over and hugged her. "Okay, I'll leave," I said, trying to calm the situation, but it didn't do much. "Take your things and leave," she screamed through tear-stained eyes, clenching her fists. "Steve, can't you just leave?" she shouted again before starting to cry. I wanted to hug her and comfort her, but that was no longer possible now or ever in the future. I packed 2 suitcases and went down the stairs. Linda looked at me, and I slipped out from under the door and left. There was a Motel 8 2 blocks from work, and I checked in there. Got a corporate discount because I said I would stay at least 2 weeks. I thought that after 2 weeks, maybe she would calm down enough to talk to me. Thus began my exile. I called the children every other day and asked if Mom wanted to talk to me. The answer was always the same. Since Linda was not working, my checks were automatically deposited into our joint account. When I went to the bank and couldn't get the money, I found out that she had taken all our money and opened a new account. We didn't have much anyway, but I stopped the automatic transfers the next day. 2 weeks later, I stopped at home after work to try to talk to her. She opened the door and then slammed it in my face. She was probably still too angry. Every Friday, I would stop by the house after work, and every time she would refuse to talk to me. I saw the kids, and they wanted to know when I was coming home, and all I could tell them was hopefully soon. Rumors spread among my family, and although I became a black sheep, everyone hoped that we could make things work, including me. How could we improve our relationship if she didn't even want to talk to me? I went to her parents. I let them scold me for the first half hour. I asked no, I begged them to talk to their daughter, at least to me. I would go to counseling hell. I would crawl on my hands and knees to her if she gave me 5 minutes. They said that they would try, but that I should not create illusions. A month later, she called. Not to talk, but to yell at me because she was running out of money. "I need you to deposit your checks into my account. The bills are coming in, and I don't have enough money to cover them." "No," was my answer. "How can you not? I need this money. You owe me," she screamed into the phone. "Linda, I don't owe you anything. I will support our children, but I don't owe you anything. I've been trying to talk to you for the last couple of months, and you refused. Until something changes, we'll be getting divorced by the end of the year. I'm sure I don't want this, but I can't solve our problems alone." She hung up. 3 days later, I was served with a lawsuit. These were not standard terms and conditions. She was accusing me of cheating. I was devastated. I took Thursday and Friday off to feel sorry for myself. My parents felt sorry for me, but told me in a nutshell that it was entirely my fault. When I shouted at them and said, "Don't they think I already know this," without being reminded every day, they asked me to leave. I must have lost control when the restraining order was filed against me. I could not get within 250 yards of my house. Now, when I called to talk to the children, she refused to let them talk to me. "When you start depositing your checks again, maybe I'll let you talk to them," she told me. I knew what I had done was wrong, but it was wrong. It was just not fair. I fought, but lost on all counts. Then I got angry. I received a court order to remove all my belongings from my home. I came there with a truck and took all my tools, clothes, and everything that I had before our marriage. I had a court-approved list, and the sheriff was with me, so there were no problems. When I picked up the stereo, she was unhappy. But when the movers loaded the big TV and microwave, she got angry. When they took the bed out of our bedroom, she was furious and screamed at me. The sheriff had to tell her to calm down more than once. "Linda, I didn't want it to come to this, but you left me no choice." She told me to go to hell. I ended up moving in with my parents out of necessity. The motel was getting too expensive, the legal fees were skyrocketing, and I needed to see a friendly face every now and then. Linda's lawyer went to court, and the judge ordered temporary spousal and child support payments. It was almost 3/4 of what I was earning. My lawyer said we could fight it, but it would take time. I can't live on what's left. It's not even enough to rent an apartment. He told me to look for a second job. That night, I found myself outside my house, knocking on the front door, begging Linda to talk to me when the cops arrived. The children were crying, looking out the window, while the police explained that I had violated the restriction order. "Linda, I know you can hear me," I shouted. "If you don't talk to me, I'll quit tomorrow and you'll get nothing ever. Do you hear me? Please, I love you, don't do this to us," I screamed through my tears. I saw her look at me for a moment and then disappear. I was escorted from the site. "Dan, this is my resignation letter effective today," I said, handing it to him. I explained what was going on and said that Linda had sent her lawyer to look after me and that they wanted more than their share of the flesh. "Steve, I'm sorry and I don't want to lose you. Let's say you're quitting for what, 3-4 months? You'll be out of state, but your job will be waiting for you when this is all over. Do your homework and good luck. Looks like you'll need it." I also fired my lawyer and turned off my cell phone. Now I was unemployed, living with my parents, and only had $500. "What do you mean, quit? Did you love that job?" Linda shouted at me over the phone to my parents. "I loved you more, but it seems I've lost both. You can't do this to the kids and me." I already did. "Call work and talk to Dan. It's settled. We'll probably lose the house, and I'm sorry to say both cars will be gone in about 2 months if we don't pay the bills. Tell your pitbull lawyer to send me the papers and I'll sign them. But I have $500 left, so that's all he can get. You win, Linda. You finally broke me. I hope it was worth it." This time I hung up. The papers never arrived. My father asked what my plans were, but as I told everyone, I had no idea. I missed my kids and even my wife or ex-wife, but I reached a point where I didn't care anymore. I had screwed up my life, and it was time to move on. "Steve, honey, you need to eat something. You're losing too much weight," my mother told me. She was right. These last 6 months have been hard for all of us, especially me. My father wasn't that nice. "Son, get your head out of your ass. You can't complain forever. Be a fucking man and lift yourself up, damn it. You're starting to make me sick, looking at what you've become." He was right. I told Dan I wasn't coming back. Linda is divorcing me and refuses to even let me see the kids, and the damn court won't even force her to. I'm just tired, and it's time to take the rest of my life and move on. I shook his hand, and he said I could use him as a reference when I eventually decided what to do. Dad said I was running away, and Mom just said to write wherever I went. I sold my TV and everything else and walked away with $1,000 in my pocket and 2 suitcases of clothes. My car hadn't been picked up yet, so I was on the road at 8 in the morning. I left a note for Mom and Linda, my wedding ring, and my grandfather's pocket watch to be given to my son. I was angry at Linda for letting things get to this point, but I was even more angry at myself for starting it all. 2 states later, I stopped. I needed a job, any job, to support myself. Over the next 3 months, I did a million menial jobs to pay rent and buy food. I was working as a bartender when a group of businessmen came in. I've seen them before and couldn't help but listen to their complaints. "I need a man who can sell snow to an Eskimo, and I needed him yesterday. My 2 best salesmen left last month, and you wouldn't believe the crap that's out there." I wrote my current phone number on an old business card along with Dan's number. "I can sell snow to an Eskimo and teach him to sell it to his friends," I said, handing him the map. "You can check with my old boss if you don't believe me," I said, now moving to pour someone else's drink. By the time I got back, they were gone, but at least they took the card. When he didn't return the next week, I was sure he had thrown the card away. The following Tuesday, he showed up just after 5. "Dan confirmed your story and said I'd be a fool to let you go. The only question is, if you're so good, why do you work here?" I gave him the short version, and they hired me to take over. I worked hard. Damn, that was all I had left to do. I sent my mom 50% of my first paycheck to give to Linda, but not to tell her where I was. I didn't need other lawyer ruining my second chance. I just went to work and gave 150%. When I stopped for a drink after work and a woman sat next to me and said, "Hi, my cramps are back," I left, went back to my small apartment, and sent another $500 to my mom for Linda. The spasms have passed. I had been away for almost a year when my mother called. She was the only one on earth who had my secret phone number. Linda is asking about you. You didn't tell me? No, I didn't tell her where you are, but you'll be easy to find if she will hire a private detective. She just wanted to know how you were doing. I said you're fine considering the circumstances. Now she'll probably try to find me since I have a job again. I've done some shit, but why can't she just leave me alone like she asked? Steve, I don't know. I just thought you should know. I thanked my mom and asked her to say hi to my dad. If I get the annual bonus I'm thinking about, I'll send you something nice. Just come home for the holidays. That would be the best gift I could ask for. I can't, Mom, and we both know why. Just take care. I love you. The holidays were terrible. Hell, it was worse than terrible, but I survived. I received the bonus and sent Linda a little more money along with something special for my parents. When Fran sat down on the next chair in the club, I waited for my cramps to begin, but they didn't. She was tall, with long brown hair, and very attractive. I bought her a drink and spent the night talking to her. Was I trying to get her into bed? Hell no, I wasn't going to repeat the same mistake, but I made an appointment with her for next Thursday. She wanted to know everything about me and was not shy to ask. When I mentioned that I was divorced from my wife, she didn't even blink, but asked questions about who was to blame and why. Fran, I made a mistake once in my life, and it cost me everything I had saved up to that point. But my ex made sure that I lived through my mistake every day until I finally left. Do you still love her? That's a tough question. I guess I still love her. Well, the old Linda, and not the new bitch she's become. Sorry, it's still a little painful, but after a couple of drinks like this, I'm becoming more indifferent about it, I said, ordering another circle. Dinner was wonderful. She was the type of woman you felt comfortable being around. When she suggested a nightcap in her motel room, I politely declined, saying that when my divorce was officially finalized, I would be happy to take our relationship further, but not right now. We met a couple more times before she said her project here was finished and she needed to go home. I asked her to give me advance notice next time so I could plan something. She smiled and kissed me. See you again, she said as she pulled out of the restaurant parking lot. After that night, I buried old Steve. I was still working hard, probably harder than the two men combined, but now I was making time for myself. I ate healthy, started going to the gym and running again. My energy levels were higher, and I looked better than I had in a long time. I was still sending money home every week, but I was at a point in my life where I was ready to take the next step toward recovery. Mom, I want Linda to send me the divorce papers. I'll sign them and end our year-long nightmare. Tell her I'll be fair, but it won't be the 75% she asked for last time, and I want full rights to meet with children. Steve, are you sure you want to do this? Mom, it's time to start over, and I can't do that while still married to her. I was expecting the paper next week, but got the best surprise ever. Fran called and said she would be in town Tuesday night. Do you have time for dinner? She asked. Just tell me when and where, I said with no small amount of excitement in my voice. We had dinner at the same restaurant as last time. I ordered a bottle of wine and again, we had a fantastic evening. I need to show you something in my room. I brought it with me from home, she said with a huge smile. When we got to the door of her room, she started pestering me a lot. Fran, I can't, at least not now, maybe soon, I said this time with a smile on my face. Well, don't blame the girl for trying, she said, opening the hotel room door. You'll really like this, she said, turning on the light. Linda stood there, looking at me. Sorry for the deception, but she hired me to test whether the statement once a cheater, always a cheater is true in your case. That was all she had time to say. So still pulling the strings, Linda, I shouted. And Fran, what would have happened if I had decided to come up to you last time? Would you do it? Would you take the blow? But then that would make you a woman of easy virtue, not a treacherous bitch, I said, turning around and leaving. I think this is not what they expected. Mom, did you know about this? You mean Linda wanted to see you? Yes, I knew. She talked to me when she dropped off the kids this morning. And about these games, she played with me. There was silence on the other end of the line. I hung up. The next day, I came to work early. I closed the door and told the secretary that I did not accept calls or visitors. I skipped lunch and decided to go to the gym after work. I didn't just visit the gym. I beat him until I could barely stand. The shower brought me back to life, but I was still furious. Fran was waiting for me in my car. I'm sorry, okay? It was my job to check on you. You have no idea how many creeps there are out there. And how many creatures, I answered. Okay, I think I owe you this. She just wanted to be sure, that's all. Confident of what? That she broke me and hurt me to the core? Even though I was wrong, she never gave me a chance to explain myself and ask for forgiveness. What about the way she emptied our bank accounts and then turned on me as her lawyer? And the final humiliation by telling me that I had to pay her to see my children. Did I want to see her? Yes, but to close the book of my past life, to start again, I shouted at her. I thought you were special. Apparently, I'm still bad at reading people. Steve, just talk to her. What do you have to lose? She told me to tell you that she won't leave until you talk to her. I let her wait 2 days. The three of us met in a quiet restaurant. Steve, I'm sorry about all this, but I needed to know, Linda said, a little embarrassed. Why don't you just call and ask if I cheat on every skirt? I said, clearly annoyed. Oh yeah, that's right, you refused to talk to me. So Linda, how many times have you gotten revenge over the past year? With a sexy figure like yours, they should have been lining up down our driveway. Learned any new tricks? She could have at least sent me a video to add further salt to my wounds, I said, challenging her. Steve, are you done? Any more shots? Let me know when you're done so we can finally have an adult conversation, Fran said, looking at me and then at Linda, who was startled by my attack. I think that's it, I said, finishing my drink and ordering another. Steve, you hurt me. You have no idea how much you hurt me. You were the last person in the world I expected to cheat on me. I think when you told me that I just lost my head, but can you blame me? What would you do if you were me? What would you do if I cheated on you? Would you welcome me back with open arms? I doubt it. I think my lawyer went a little overboard, but he was simply protecting my interests and our children's. Steve, I wasn't working, and when the money started running out, I got scared. Linda, you could talk to me. No, I couldn't. I was still furious. So you just unleashed the dogs of hell on me. Now I understand why there are so many angry ex-husbands. I would support our children, but you wanted and got your share of the flesh. By the way, do you still keep the house? I was able to keep it with the help of my parents as well as the car. I was grateful when you started sending money, but not grateful enough to let me see the kids or pick up the phone and call me. If you had remembered, you would have left with no way to contact you. Nonsense, you could have talked to your mom, she would have told me. You still found a way to find me, I said, now looking at Fran. Well, you got what you paid for, she's really good. Hell, I even thought I liked her, stupid of me. Sorry about that, but I needed to be sure of that. Well, you got your answers, I got mine. So why don't you give me the damn papers so I can sign them and end this farcical, a comedy that was once a marriage, so we could both move on with our lives? Aren't you interested in our children, or why am I here? Mom's telling me about the kids, and I don't really care why you're here. Don't you at least want to see your children? More than anything, but I thought that if I went back, you'd make me go to jail. That's why I stayed away. Steve, I would never do that. Come on, so says the woman who wouldn't let me see them until I deposited my salary into your account and who filed a restraining order against me. That was nice of you, by the way. Steve, like I said, I was afraid you wouldn't support us. I had no choice. Linda, you didn't even give me a chance. Hell, you didn't even give us a chance. I thought about what happened a million times. Would I do it again? Never in my life. Would I keep quiet, knowing what I know now? I don't think so. Look, I couldn't live with what I did to you. It was eating me up, and in the end, I couldn't live with the lie anymore. So I ruined a good marriage, and I've been paying for it every day since that night. Now that we've all apologized, we can move on with our lives. Don't ask me to be your friend because I don't have it in me. I loved you too much to watch you move on. Stay here and start a new life. I'll see the kids when I can, and we'll all learn to live with it. To answer your question, I've dated a few guys, but I haven't slept with any of them, in case you were wondering. Damn, girl. I remember how much you enjoyed sex with me. Now at least you can sleep with the next guy you meet. We didn't have sex, we made love, and yes, I miss that a lot, more than you can imagine. Enough talk about sex. You missed Fran, I would move the earth for you. You can ask my wife. She never complained. What would you say if I asked you to try again? You know, to see if there's anything left between us? Linda suddenly asked. Why? Why now? Have you forgiven me? I doubt it. And besides, if I leave my job to come home and it doesn't work, I'll have to start all over again. I don't have the strength to do that. I talked to Dan, and he says you can go back to your old job with the same seniority you had when you left. When did you talk to Dan? 3 weeks ago. Steve, I'm not saying this will be easy, but I'm ready to try again. I want to take back what we had, and I think we can do that. Would you like to give us another chance, with me and the children? Linda asked. If you had asked me 6 months ago, I would have gladly taken the chance. But now, in my head, I have already moved on. It was difficult, but I came to the conclusion that what I had was gone, and for the sake of my own sanity, I needed to come to terms with this. Give me a day or two to think about it and talk to Dan. I guess that's all I can ask for now, but think about what we can have again. I spent the next 3 days on the phone before boarding a plane home to meet Dan. He was glad to see me and was delighted at the prospect of my return. I couldn't find anyone who filled up your place and heard you're doing great at Apex Industries. I was amazed when Linda came to talk to me about your return. When she asked if I would consider taking you back, I said in a heartbeat. We talked, but Dan was surprised at how much I was making now and that I would need to come back. He said he was not authorized to offer that amount, but would let me know in a couple of days. I stayed with my parents, and the first day was a bit stressful. Sorry, Linda made me promise not to tell you anything. Looks like she planned this for a couple of months after she found you. And no, I didn't give you away. She found you yourself. Just smile and go see your kids. They know you're in town. I went to my old house and rang the doorbell. I saw them look out the window, open the door, and rush into my arms. They cried, I cried, and we stood on the porch for about 10 minutes. After that, they didn't stop talking about every detail that had happened to them over the past year. They didn't ask one question that I thought they would ask right away, apparently afraid of my answer. Finally, they asked if I was going back home. Not sure, guys, but no matter what happens, I plan on seeing you a lot more now. I didn't even notice the way Linda was looking at us when she was watching from the kitchen. You didn't need to ring the doorbell, it's still your house too. Linda, the last time I came here, I was escorted by 2 policemen, remember? It brought back memories for her. Is the restrictive order still in effect? This gave her another worried expression. Steve, I don't know. When I paused everything, I don't know if it extended to this. I'll have to check that. The house looked the same, but the yard was a little neglected. Everything looked exactly the same as the day I left, as if I had returned home after a day of work, but I knew that was not the case, not yet. Steve, do you want to stay for dinner? We're having chicken with all the trimmings. My children didn't let me say no. They even convinced me to help them set the table while Linda watched. During dinner, the children did not stop talking, telling me about everything. Finally, it dawned on me what they were doing. They weren't sure when they would see me next, so they tried to make up for lost time and show how happy they were to see me. Children always find themselves in the middle of these things, and although it's unfair, it's a fact. They continued without ceasing until bedtime. Linda told them it was time to go to bed, and that their dad would put them to bed. I kissed them both and said I loved them. He hugged them tightly. "Wonderful children," I said, entering the kitchen. "They missed you." "I know, and I'm sorry about that," I said as I stood there, unsure of what to do next. "Would you like a cup of coffee?" "I can brew it if you're interested," Linda asked. "I talked to Dan today and told him what I needed to get back. He's not sure he can offer me the salary I have now, but he should respond within a couple of days. Also, how are you doing?" I asked. "You know, I cope day by day. I work part-time as a cashier at a grocery store. It gives me a little extra money and gets me out of the house while the kids are at school. Are you still thinking about what we talked about?" "Well, I talked to Dan, I talked to my parents, but I guess yours are still mad at me." "I think they're just as angry with me as they are with you. After you talked to them, we had a little disagreement. I didn't want to listen to what they thought because I thought I knew better. They told me that this whole mess is your fault, but I didn't help either by doing what I did." "What are our chances? Are you considering giving us another chance?" "Linda, I wish I could take us back to where we were, but I'm not sure that's possible. You'll always see me as traitor, and while you may eventually forgive me, you'll still wonder when I leave town if I'm cheating on you again." "Steve, that's why I hired Fran. She came with great recommendations as someone who could figure out if your spouse would cheat. When she met you, she wasn't sure about you, and even on the last date, she thought she could still get you into bed. And no, she's not sleeping with these guys. She said she was going to try the last time I came with her, but you stopped her. She was never impressed. I didn't expect you to attack us like that. I thought you'd be glad to see me, but after you left, I realized what it looked like. I'm really sorry, but I needed to be sure. I didn't want to open myself up to have it all happen again. And no, Steve, all the talk in the world couldn't convince me. I needed to see it with my own eyes that you wouldn't rush to the first woman who showed interest in you." "What about you? You've been dating for the last 9 months. How can I trust that you haven't slept with everyone? Maybe I should hire Fran or Frank to check on you, so to speak. Like I said, a year and a half is a long time. Time without sex. I'd be lying if I said I didn't think about it more than once with a few guys I've dated, 2 of them in particular." "Were you dating someone I know?" She was silent for about a minute and then said that I know some of them. "Great, so if we ever get back together, I'll have to wonder which one of my good friends tried to seduce you." "Steve, the key word here is tried. No one has ever been successful at even getting first base. All they ever get is a kiss goodnight. You have to believe it. Now I have to ask myself, why not? Why didn't you take revenge? Was it because you still loved me? I doubt it, but there must have been something significant. Otherwise, you wouldn't have gotten by without this all this time. If you really want to know, it's because I didn't want to be a cheater like you. I decided that I wouldn't do what you did just to get back at you. That's why I didn't let any of them drag me into bed. I was probably waiting for our divorce to end before I spread my wings. So you took the moral high ground. I guess that was another way of holding it over me. You didn't cheat and I did, even though you had the opportunity. We just looked at each other for the next couple of minutes. Steve, I'm not saying this will be easy. This will probably be the hardest thing we've ever tried to do, and hell, we can only last 2 weeks before we say it's not worth it. But at least we can say we tried, and I only really want to try if you want to. Linda, there's so much pain on both sides. I just don't see how I can go home and jump into your bed and go back to the way things were before. Who was talking about you coming straight back to my bed? I'm not ready for that yet. We have a lot of bridges to build before I invite you back to my bed. Plus, I insist on outside counseling and a legal agreement for future. Something like after marriage contract. This way, if something happens, everything will be clearly described. How about I cheat again, right? If you want to call it that, yes. I need to know that I will be protected. You can include any concerns you have in this agreement, and then we will reassure it and move on. I also want to do a blood test and a lie detector test. That way there won't be any surprises in the future. You want me to take a lie detector test to find out if I cheated on someone? Yes, and I'll take it too. Right now, you don't trust me, and Linda, I don't fully trust you either. So after we both pass this test, we might have a chance to build something. Let your lawyer prepare the agreement and have mine review it. It shouldn't take long. Steve, does it sound like we're making some kind of contract rather than trying to repair our marriage? This is essentially a marriage contract, I told her. Okay, let's get all the details sorted out so we can get started. I'll set up counseling sessions and we'll be ready when you get home. Only after Dan agrees and we work out the rest of the details. She frowned. Hey, you wanted to be protected in case something happened in the future, so I just followed your lead. Dan came back with an offer. I sent my terms to her lawyer for an agreement, and on Thursday I took a lie detector test. I returned for the weekend and, to Linda's surprise, stayed with my parents. We had a good time with the kids, and I started to feel like we were a family again. Her terms were unacceptable again, but that didn't surprise me. I had to tell Linda to tell her lawyer to get a grip, or we'd never get back together. Linda, the state rule for 2 children is 30%. He's still asking for 60%. She agreed and finally offered something for me to sign. What surprised me was that Linda didn't pass her lie detector test with flying colors. It turned out that she went further with one guy than she told me. She didn't sleep with him, but she was close. I didn't want to tell you because I knew you'd be angry. Oh, so you decided to lie to me instead of hurting me, is that it? I guess that's what I should have done then, and we wouldn't be having this conversation now. Steve, it was an old friend. Satisfied. What did you do? Call him and ask him if he wanted to have sex? I said sarcastically. For that matter, he walked through my checkout at the store, and we started talking, and he asked me out. I told him I was divorced, and one night we got drunk, and it almost happened. I stopped it and told him that this will never happen again, and it did not happen again. So my ideal wife is also a person, isn't she? Don't you feel better that you told the truth? She understood what I meant. It took another 2 weeks to settle the agreement, give notice, and move out of my apartment. The first night in my house was strange, to say the least. She kissed me before we went to separate rooms to sleep. I would kill to see Linda, even a little naked. The next week, we started our 2-week counseling sessions, and I tried to come home for dinner every night. I limited my first business trip to 2 nights. I called her after dinner and talked to her and the kids for almost half an hour. I half expected Linda to call back around 3 in the morning to make sure I was still there and alone, but that didn't happen. She met me at the door with a kiss and a hug. We had a chance to improve our relationship. After 6 intense weeks, I asked in our sessions when I would be allowed back into our bedroom. Notice I said our bedroom. Linda said she wasn't ready yet, but I insisted. Are we talking about 1 more week? 3, 6? I need some kind of time frame, I told them both. Steve, you can't expect your problems to be solved overnight, the counselor said. If we had talked last year, we would have moved on, but she refused to talk to me. So now she wants to talk, but I have no idea how long she is going to keep me in the dark. Why would anyone? Don't give me your best rating, I said, looking at Linda. How about 6 weeks, she answered. Then how about I leave this week? This shook them both up. Steve, you can't expect your problems to be solved overnight, the consultant repeated. I'm not going to live with my wife and sleep in a separate room for the next 6 weeks. If she doesn't love me enough to sleep with me, then what the hell are we doing here? Linda, you were the one who found me, and not vice versa. Steve, Linda had some serious problems and didn't trust you. You can't expect her to immediately come back to bed with you after everything that happened. She had no problem doing this to her old friend, I said, knowing what the reaction would be. And if you hadn't cheated, we wouldn't be here, she screamed back. Here's the problem. I'm still paying for my mistake and will forever be. I told you before, I couldn't and wouldn't be able to live like this if I went back. I'm as sorry as only a person can be for what I did, but for almost 2 years I paid everything I could. I was tested and jumped through all the hoops I was going to jump through. It seems she wants to change and enjoy my salary, but doesn't want a husband, me. If she needs a scapegoat, let her look for someone else. I got up and left, despite the consultant's objections. I finished getting ready by the time Linda got home. She didn't say a word until I closed the last suitcase. Are you really leaving? I'll be at Motel 8 until I find an apartment. I'll be back this weekend to get the rest of my things. I don't want you to leave, she said with tears in her eyes. But you're not trying to make me stay. I can't live with the woman I love in the next room who hates me. Steve, I don't hate you. But I'm not sure if you still love me. Linda, when you realize that, let me know, I said as I left the house for the last time. On Friday, Dan and I were sitting in the motel bar having drinks. Sorry to hear about you and Linda. I thought things would work out for you. So am I. I guess my cheating was too much of a deal breaker for her. We truly had a wonderful marriage. I will miss it. Well, at least I got my best salesman back. You're not going to leave again, are you? No, this time I'm staying. I have children and family here. I'm not going anywhere. We had one more drink each before Dan went home to his family. I envied him. I was watching a basketball game on TV at the bar when she sat down next to me and ordered a glass of white wine. I didn't pay attention to her until she asked me the score of the game. Atlanta leads Chicago by 5 points, and they're in the third quarter. They always lose in the fourth. Want to bet they'll lose? What do you want to bet on? I asked. Let's agree on something. The main thing is, do you want to argue? Okay, I said, looking at the brunette next to me. If they lose, I'll treat you to dinner with all the trimmings. However, if Atlanta wins, we'll do something different. What exactly? Don't worry, you'll like it. She looked at me and finally extended her hand. Deal, let the best woman win. The game was back and forth until late in the fourth quarter when Atlanta began to lose the lead. When they were 7 points behind with 2 minutes left, I still thought I had a chance, but after 2 late fouls, I knew I had lost. Well, it looks like you were right. What do you want for dinner? Steak, seafood, Mexican, or maybe Italian? I asked. I'm not really hungry. Do you have a number? Looks like we're moving straight to dessert, and indeed we did. The brown wig was a nice touch. I thought you'd like it, considering Fran is a brunette, Linda said, throwing it to the floor. Personally, I prefer blondes, but a redhead can be a nice change sometimes. We'll see what I can do, but enough talk, she said. She spent the night with me for the first time in a year. I called work the next morning and told them I was sick and that I would see them on Monday if I was still alive. I was about to apologize, but she put her finger on my lips. No past, only future from now on. We spent the next 8 hours talking between sessions. We still had issues to resolve, but ultimately none of them became stumbling blocks, unless they happen again, which won't happen in my life. The extra room became just an extra room again. My parents were happy that we were trying to make things work, as was her mother, but her father decided to wait and see. Most importantly, we are a real family again. What I thought 2 months ago seemed impossible. Linda and I had just celebrated our 3-month anniversary and were having dinner at a nice restaurant when I heard a familiar laugh. I turned around and saw Fran and an attractive man in his 40s having dinner. Do you think I should warn him? I asked Linda as she sipped her wine. Did anyone warn you? Good point, but this guy looks like he'll be dead meat by the end of the evening. I went back to my steak. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.